Commander Elena Vasquez pressed her hand against the cold glass of the observation window. Outside, two suns circled each other in an endless dance of fire and light. She had watched this view 1,000 times in the past 3 years, but tonight something felt different. The research station Meridian floated silently in space, far from Earth. Far from everything she had ever known. Alina turned away from the window when the alarm began to beep. It was a soft sound, not urgent, but it meant something had caught the station's attention. She walked quickly to the main control room where her team was already gathering. Dr. James Chen sat at his station, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen. His face was pale and his eyes were wide with something that looked like fear. "What is it?" Alina asked, moving to stand behind him. James didn't look up. "A signal. We picked up a transmission from deep space. It's not natural, Commander. Someone sent this." Lena felt her heart beat faster. In 3 years at Meridian, they had never detected any sign of alien life. They had searched, hoped, and wondered, but always found nothing. Now, finally, something had answered back. "Can you decode it?" she asked. James shook his head slowly. "It's not like anything in our database. The structure is completely alien, but there's a pattern, a rhythm to it. Someone is definitely trying to communicate." The next 72 hours passed in a blur. James barely slept, barely ate. He sat at his station with coffee cups piling up beside him, working to unlock the mystery of the transmission. Alina watched him work, bringing him food, making sure he rested when his eyes began to close. The rest of the crew moved quietly through the station, speaking in whispers, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. On the 3rd day, James finally stood up from his chair. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was a mess, and he had dark circles under his eyes. But he was smiling. "Got it," he said. "Commander, I know what they're saying." Elena called everyone to the main room. The crew gathered around as James pulled up the translation on the big screen. The alien words appeared first, strange symbols that looked like flowing water. Then, beneath them, English words began to form. "Help us. Please, if anyone can hear this, help us. We are the Valorians. Our world is dying. Something came from the darkness between stars. We call it the Swarm. It eats everything. Our cities are falling. Our people are dying. We have fought, but we cannot win. If there is anyone out there, if there is any mercy in the universe, please help us. This is our last call. This is our final hope." The room was silent. Alina read the message again, then again. Somewhere out in the darkness, people were dying. An entire civilization was being destroyed, and they had reached out hoping someone would hear. "How far away are they?" Alina asked. James checked his calculations. "Based on the signal strength and direction, I estimate about 6 weeks travel time from Earth at maximum speed. But Commander, we need to send this back home immediately." "Earth needs to know," Lena nodded. She knew what had to be done, but the weight of it pressed down on her shoulders. This wasn't just first contact. This was a call for help, a desperate plea from people who had nowhere else to turn. If humanity ignored this, what would that say about who they were? She walked to the communications. Consulate began composing the message to Earth. She included everything, the original alien transmission, James's translation, their analysis of where it came from, and her own recommendation. At the end, she added her personal thoughts. "To Earth Command," she wrote, "we have received a distress call from an alien species. They are under attack and facing extinction. I know we have protocols, procedures, and rules about first contact, but sometimes the right thing to do is simple. These people need help. I believe we should answer their call. Commander Elena Vasquez, Research Station Meridian." She sent the message and then waited. It would take weeks for it to reach Earth, traveling through space at the speed of light. Weeks more for any response to come back. But Alina knew that on Earth, when her message arrived, everything would change. What Alina didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for longer than she realized. When humans first developed faster-than-light travel and ventured into deep space, they knew they might not be alone. Military planners, scientists, and world leaders had spent years creating plans for every possible scenario. One scenario was labeled First Contact Under Crisis. It outlined what humanity should do if they encountered alien life that needed help. There was another thing Elena didn't know. Other species in the galaxy had been watching humanity for years. They had seen humans spread slowly through their local star systems. They had monitored Earth's broadcasts, studied human history, noted one fact above all others. Humans came from a death world. Earth was a planet of extremes. It had violent weather, deadly animals, poisonous plants, and diseases that killed without mercy. Gravity was stronger there than on most inhabited worlds. The atmosphere was harsh. The oceans were deep and dangerous. Most species in the galaxy had evolved on gentler worlds, places where survival didn't require a constant struggle. But Earth had been different. Every day on Earth was a fight to survive, and that fight had shaped humanity into something unique. They were tough, adaptable, and stubborn. When faced with impossible odds, they didn't give up. They got creative. They found ways to win. The other species had a name for humans. They called them Deathworlders. Back on the station, Elena and her crew continued their work. They analyzed the Valorian transmission, trying to learn everything they could. James worked on improving the translation. Discovering nuances in the language, Dr. Sarah Martinez, the station's biologist, studied what little information they could gather about Valorian biology from the signal itself. At night, Elena stood at the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, the Valorians were fighting for their lives. She wondered if help would arrive in time. She wondered if Earth would even send help at all. But deep in her heart, she believed they would. Humanity had its flaws, its problems, its dark chapters in history. But she had seen enough goodness in people to believe that, when faced with this choice, they would do the right thing. 3 weeks after sending her message, something unexpected happened. The station received another transmission, but this one wasn't from the Valorians. It was from somewhere else, somewhere closer. James decoded it quickly. To the human station Meridian, it read, "We have monitored your transmission. We know about the Valorians. We know about the swarm. You should not interfere. The swarm cannot be stopped. Many have tried. All have failed. Save yourselves. Do not go there." Lena read the message and felt a chill run down her spine. So there were others out there, watching, listening, and they were afraid. She sent a response asking who they were, but received no answer. Whoever had warned them had said what they needed to say, and then gone silent. The crew debated what the warning meant. Some thought it proved that helping was too dangerous. Others argued it showed how much the Valorians needed help. Elena listened to all of them, but didn't share her own thoughts. She was the commander, and she had already made her decision. Now, it was up to Earth. Far away, moving at the speed of light, her message raced toward home. And on Earth, in command centers and government offices around the world, people were about to face the biggest decision in human history. Admiral Marcus Webb was drinking his morning coffee when the priority message arrived at Luna Command. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes, someone who had spent 40 years in space watching humanity slowly reach for the stars. He had seen the first colony on Mars, the mining stations in the asteroid belt, and the research outposts scattered across the solar system. But he had never seen anything like this. He read Commander Vasquez's message 3 times. An alien species. A distress call. A threat called the swarm. He set down his coffee cup and immediately called an emergency. Meeting of the Space Command Council. Within 6 hours, representatives from every major space program on Earth gathered in the Luna Command conference room. They came from Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. They spoke different languages and represented different governments, but they all understood what this moment meant. Humanity was being asked to step onto the galactic stage, not as explorers or traders, but as rescuers. The debate lasted for 2 days. Some argued that humanity barely had the resources to protect itself, let alone travel across space to help strangers. Others pointed out that this was exactly the kind of moment that would define who humanity was. If they turned away now, What would that say about their values? What would it say about their future in the galaxy? General Chen Lu from the Panasian Alliance made the argument that convinced everyone. "We have spent centuries fighting each other on Earth," he said. "We have wasted resources, lives, and time on conflicts that benefited no one. Now we have a chance to unite for something greater. If we cannot come together to help people who are dying, then we don't deserve to call ourselves civilized." The vote was unanimous. Earth would send a fleet. The next 48 hours were chaos. Every spacefaring nation began mobilizing their military vessels. The European Space Coalition prepared their carrier, the ESC Indomitable, a massive ship designed to launch smaller fighters and shuttles. The Panasian Alliance readied the Rising Sun, a battlecruiser equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. The American African Union prepared Freedom's Reach, a dreadnought that combined heavy armor with powerful engines. Dozens of support ships joined them, supply vessels, medical ships, troop transports, and science vessels. Every ship that could make the journey was called to Mars, where the fleet would assemble before departing. Captain Sarah Okonkwo received her orders while overseeing repairs to Freedom's Reach at the Earth's orbital shipyard. She was a career officer, someone who had joined the Space Force as soon as she was old enough and had worked her way up through skill and determination. At 42 years old, she commanded one of humanity's most powerful warships and a crew of 500 people. She gathered her senior officers in the briefing room and explained the mission. Many of them had never expected to see combat. The Space Force had been created to protect Earth and its colonies, but there had never been an enemy to fight. Training exercises and patrol duties had been their life. Now that was about to change. "I won't lie to you," Sarah told them. "We don't know what we're flying into. We don't know if we can win. But we know people are dying, and we have the chance to help them. That's enough for me. If anyone wants to transfer off this ship, I'll approve it with no questions asked." No one left. Every single officer wanted to be part of the mission. The crew of Freedom's Reach began preparations immediately. Engineers checked every system twice. Weapons officers ran combat drills. Medical staff prepared the ship's hospital bay for potential casualties. Supply officers loaded food, water, ammunition, and repair materials. Everyone worked around the clock, knowing that lives depended on their readiness. Dr. Yuki Tanaka came aboard 3 days before departure. She was the fleet's chief xenobiologist, a brilliant scientist who had spent her career studying the possibility of alien life. Now, she would finally meet actual aliens. Though not under the circumstances she had always imagined, Yuki set up her laboratory on Freedom's Reach, began studying everything they knew about the Valorians and the swarm. It wasn't much. The distress call provided some biological data, and there were a few images captured from the signal's carrier wave. The Valorians appeared to be humanoid, but taller and thinner than humans. Their skin had a strange iridescent quality, and their eyes were larger than human eyes. The swarm was more mysterious. The images showed a gray, writhing mass that seemed to consume everything it touched. Yuki ran analysis after analysis, trying to understand what it was. Her best guess was that it was some kind of self-replicating nanotechnology machines, so small they acted like a living organism. If she was right, it meant the swarm could adapt and evolve. Learning from every encounter, the thought terrified her. At Mars orbit, the fleet came together. Sarah stood on the bridge of Freedom's Reach and watched the other ships arrive one by one. The Indomitable was enormous, dwarfing every other vessel. The Rising Sun was sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons. The support ships filled in around them, creating a formation that looked like something from a military history book. Admiral Webb's flagship, Unity, took position at the center of the fleet. It was an older ship, not as powerful as the newer vessels, but it had been chosen for its advanced communications systems. Admiral Webb needed to coordinate dozens of ships across vast distances, and Unity could do that better than any other vessel. The fleet conducted 3 days of joint exercises in Mars orbit. Ships that had never worked together before had to learn to move as one unit. Captains had to learn each other's styles and capabilities. Communication protocols had to be established and tested. It was messy at first, with ships almost colliding and orders getting confused. But gradually, they improved. On the final day before departure, Admiral Webb addressed the entire fleet. His face appeared on screens in every ship, in every cabin, in every corridor. Thousands of people stopped what they were doing to listen. "People of Earth," he began, "we are about to embark on the most important mission in human history. We are not going to claim territory. We are not going to seek profit or glory. We are going to help people who are dying. Some of you may not come back. This mission is dangerous, and I won't pretend otherwise. But I believe in you. I believe in humanity. We are stronger together than we have ever been apart. Let's show the galaxy who we are." The fleet departed the next morning. One by one, the ships activated their faster-than-light drives and jumped into the darkness. Sarah watched Mars disappear from her screens and felt a mixture of fear and excitement. They were leaving the solar system, leaving everything familiar behind. Ahead of them lay the unknown. The journey would take 3 months. 3 months to prepare, to train, to become ready for whatever waited at the end. Sarah walked through the corridors of Freedom's Reach, watching her crew work. They were young and old, experienced and new, from every part of Earth. But they were united by purpose. In her quarters that night, Sarah recorded a message to her family back on Earth. She told them she loved them. She told them she was proud to be part of this mission. She told them not to worry, even though she knew they would. Then she deleted the message without sending it. If something went wrong, if she didn't make it back, there would be time for goodbyes later. Right now, she needed to focus on the mission. Across the fleet, thousands of others did the same thing. They wrote messages they wouldn't send. They looked at pictures of home. They thought about what they were leaving behind and what they were flying toward. And then they got back to work, because there was still so much to do. The Deathworlder fleet was advancing, carrying humanity's answer to a desperate call for help. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see what these survivors of Earth would do when faced with the impossible. The first month of the journey tested everyone's patience. Space travel was mostly waiting, watching screens, and maintaining systems. The excitement of departure faded into routine. Crew members worked their shifts, ate their meals, and slept in their small cabins. Day after day, the fleet moved through the darkness between stars, heading toward a destination most of them couldn't even imagine. Captain Sarah Okonkwo walked through Freedom's Reach every day, talking to her crew. She learned their names, asked about their families, and listened to their concerns. Leadership wasn't just about giving orders. It was about understanding the people who followed those orders. She met a young engineer named Tom who missed his daughter's birthday. She talked with a medical officer named Lisa, who worried they weren't prepared for alien injuries. She shared coffee with a weapons officer named Marcus, who couldn't sleep at night. Each conversation reminded Sarah that these weren't just crew members. They were people with hopes, fears, and lives they had left behind. She carried that weight with her everywhere she went. On the other ships, similar scenes played out. Captains and commanders worked to keep morale high. Crew members formed friendships across language and cultural barriers. People who would never have met back on Earth now worked side by side. United by their mission, Admiral Webb organized regular video conferences between the ships. He wanted the fleet to feel like one unit, not separate vessels traveling in formation. During these calls, crews shared stories, jokes, and news from home. It helped ease the loneliness of deep space. Halfway through the first month, the fleet received an unexpected transmission. Research Station Meridian was requesting permission to join them. Commander Elena Vasquez explained that her crew had been studying the Valorian signal since it arrived. They had gathered valuable intelligence about the swarm and could provide real-time analysis during the mission. Admiral Webb approved the request immediately. Meridian adjusted its course and met the fleet 2 weeks later. Elena came aboard Unity and briefed the command staff on everything they had learned. She showed them enhanced translations of the Valorian messages, theoretical models of how the swarm operated, and tactical suggestions for engagement. "The swarm consumes biological matter," Elena explained, pointing to data on the screen. "It breaks down organic compounds and uses them to replicate. Each unit is microscopic, but they work together in massive swarms. They can adapt to threats, learning from each encounter. Dr. Yuki Tanaka leaned forward in her seat. So it's like fighting an intelligent virus. Worse, Alina said. A virus follows genetic programming. The swarm has artificial intelligence. It thinks, plans, and evolves. The Valorians tried conventional weapons. Bullets, missiles, bombs. Nothing worked. The swarm just adapted and kept coming. The room fell silent. Sarah felt a cold weight in her stomach. How did you fight something like that? There must be a weakness, Admiral Webb said. Nothing is invincible, Alina nodded. We think the swarm has some kind of central coordination, a hive mind that controls the individual units. If we can disrupt that coordination, we might be able to stop it. How? Sarah asked. We're still working on that, Alina admitted. The next 2 months were spent preparing for every possibility. Dr. Tanaka and her team developed new weapons based on Elena's research. They created sonic devices that could disrupt nanomachines, electromagnetic pulses that could interfere with coordination signals, and chemical compounds that might break down the swarm's structure. Lieutenant Commander David Park, the tactical officer aboard Rising Sun, spent hours analyzing every scrap of data about the swarm. He created simulations, ran models, and developed battle plans. The swarm was adaptable, but so were humans. David believed that humanity's greatest strength was creativity. The swarm followed patterns, learned from experience, and evolved predictably. Humans could improvise, think outside established patterns, and create entirely new solutions. During the journey, something strange began happening. The fleet started receiving messages from other alien species. These weren't directed at the humans specifically. They were intercepted communications, conversations between different civilizations about the human fleet. The translation AI worked overtime to decode these messages. Most of them expressed surprise that the Deathworlders were actually coming. Some warned that the swarm had destroyed other rescue attempts. A few provided tactical data about swarm behavior, though none offered to join the fight. One message stood out. It came from a species called the Thalaxians, an ancient civilization that had been observing the galaxy for millennia. Their message was simple. We have watched many species face the swarm. All have fled or fallen. Perhaps the Deathworlders will be different. The galaxy is watching. The crew debated what these messages meant. Why wouldn't other species help? Were they cowards? Or were they wise to stay away? Did humanity's willingness to fight make them brave or foolish? Sarah discussed this with Admiral Webb during one of their regular strategy sessions. They sat in his office aboard Unity, looking at star charts and mission plans. They call us Deathworlders, Sarah said. Like it's something dangerous. Webb smiled slightly. Earth is dangerous? We forget that because we're used to it. But think about what we survive every day. Storms that can level cities. Diseases that can kill millions. Animals that hunt us. We evolved in a hostile environment, and it made us tough. Is that enough? Sarah asked. Being tough? It's a start, Webb said. But I think it's more than that. We're adaptable. We don't give up. When faced with impossible odds, we find a way. That's what makes us Deathworlders. As the fleet drew closer to Valoria, the Valorians sent more transmissions. Each one was more desperate than the last. 3 of their 5 continents had fallen to the swarm. Their population had dropped by billions. They had retreated to their last strongholds and were preparing for the end. The final message came 3 days before the fleet's arrival. It was from Chancellor Zephora, the leader of the Valorian government. Her voice was tired, filled with grief and fading hope. To whoever hears this, she said, we thank you for trying. We know you are coming. We have detected your ships. We do not know who you are, but you have given us something we thought was lost. You have given us hope. Even if you arrive too late, even if we are already gone, know that in our final days, we believed someone cared. We believed we were not alone in the universe. The entire fleet heard this message. In every ship, in every cabin, people stopped what they were doing and listened. Some cried, others sat in silence. Everyone felt the weight of what they were about to face. Sarah stood on the bridge of Freedom's Reach and looked at her crew. They were ready. They had trained, prepared, and bonded. They had become something more than individuals from different nations. They had become humanity's first true space armada. "All hands," she announced over the ship's intercom. "This is the captain. In 3 days, we will arrive at Valoria. We will face an enemy unlike any we have encountered before, but we will not face it alone. We stand together with the finest fleet humanity has ever assembled." The Valorians called for help, and we answered. "Now let's finish what we started." Across the fleet, similar announcements rang out. Captains addressed their crews. Commanders rallied their troops. Scientists checked their equipment one final time. Everyone knew that the easy part was over. The real challenge was about to begin. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valorian system. Sensors immediately began. Scanning, gathering data, building a picture of what waited ahead. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. The swarm was massive, covering continents, consuming everything in its path. But the Valorians were still fighting, still holding on. Admiral Webb gave the order that everyone had been waiting for. "All ships advance. Let's show them what Deathworlders can do." The first sight of Valoria took everyone's breath away. The planet hung in space like a jewel, its 3 moons creating a beautiful pattern around it. But the beauty was corrupted by the gray mass that covered much of its surface. The swarm looked like a disease spreading across healthy skin. Consuming everything it touched, Sarah stood on the bridge of Freedom's Reach and stared at the tactical display. The swarm was even larger than the reports had suggested. 3 entire continents were covered. Only 2 remained clear, and the swarm was advancing on those 2. Orbital debris from destroyed defense satellites created a deadly obstacle course around the planet. "Contact," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from Valorian forces." On the main screen, an alien face appeared. Chancellor Zephora was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Her large eyes were filled with emotions Sarah couldn't quite read, but the hope was unmistakable. "Human fleet," Zephora said through the translation system. Through the windows, Sarah could see the Valorian capital below. A city of beautiful towers and bridges, half of it already covered by the advancing gray mass. The shuttles landed in a plaza near the city center. As the ramps lowered, Sarah got her first real look at Valoria. The sky was a deep purple, and the air smelled strange, like flowers and metal mixed together. Valorian civilians ran past, their large eyes wide with fear. "Form up," Sarah ordered. "Establish the perimeter. Nothing gets through." The Marines moved with practiced efficiency, setting up defensive positions around the plaza. Heavy weapons were deployed. Barriers were erected. Within minutes, they had created a stronghold. That's when Sarah saw the Valorians up close for the first time. They were beautiful in an alien way, tall and graceful, their skin shimmering with colors that seemed to shift in the light. But they were also terrified, exhausted, and desperate. A Valorian approached Sarah cautiously. He wore what looked like official robes, and he carried a device that must have been a translator. "You are the humans?" He asked. "Yes," Sarah said, removing her helmet so he could see her face. "Captain Sarah Okonkwo, Earth Forces, we're here to help." The Valorian's eyes grew even larger. "Earth, the death world. We have heard stories. We thought they were legends." Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared. The swarm was attacking. From 3 directions, gray masses poured into the streets, flowing like water, consuming everything they touched. Buildings dissolved. Vehicles were absorbed. Any Valorian caught by the swarm simply disappeared into the gray mass. "Open fire," Sarah commanded. The plaza erupted with weapons fire. Plasma rifles, kinetic weapons, and experimental anti-nano machine guns all fired at once. The swarm recoiled from the concentrated firepower, but it didn't stop. It kept coming, adapting with each second. Sarah grabbed her rifle and joined the fight. She had trained for combat on Earth, in simulations and exercises. But this was different. The enemy wasn't human, wasn't even alive in the traditional sense. It was a force of nature, relentless and hungry. A Valorian soldier fought beside her, using a weapon that fired some kind of energy beam. The soldier's name was Callus, and he had been fighting the swarm for months. Together, human and alien, they held the line. "Your weapons are stronger than ours," Callus shouted over the sound of battle. "We come from a dangerous world," Sarah shouted back. "We learned to build dangerous weapons." The battle lasted for hours. Wave after wave of swarm attacks were beaten back. The Marines fought with determination, knowing that behind them were thousands of civilians who needed protection. Valorian soldiers joined them, inspired by the humans' refusal to give up. Above the planet, the space battle continued. Ship after ship poured fire down onto the swarm, slowly pushing it back. But the cost was high. 2 support vessels were destroyed when swarm tendrils penetrated their shields. Dozens of fighters were lost. Every ship in the fleet took damage. As night fell on Valoria, the situation remained desperate but no longer hopeless. The humans had stopped the swarm's advance around the capital. Evacuation ships were loading civilians and taking them to orbit. The fleet had established control of the space around the planet and the plaza. Sarah sat with her back against a barrier, exhausted. Her armor was scored with marks from near misses. Around her, Marines and Valorian soldiers rested together, sharing water and ration packs. Callus sat down beside her. "Why did you come?" he asked. "We are strangers to you." Our worlds had never even met. Sarah thought about the question for a long moment. "Because you asked for help," she finally said. "Because it was the right thing to do. On Earth, we have a saying, we're all in this together. I guess that applies to the whole galaxy now." Callus made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "Deathworlders," he said. "The galaxy fears you, but I think they should admire you instead." The battle was far from over. But for the first time since arriving, Sarah believed they might actually win. The battle for Valoria raged for 6 days. 6 days of constant fighting, of advances and retreats, of victories and losses. The human fleet fought with everything they had. Using tactics learned from centuries of warfare on Earth, the Valorians fought alongside them. Inspired by the humans' refusal to give up, on the 3rd day, Freedom's Reach took critical damage. A massive swarm tendril had penetrated the ship's shields and tore through the port side. 30 crew members died instantly. Sarah felt the ship shudder around her and knew they were in serious trouble. "Damage report," she called out, gripping her command chair as the ship listed to one side. "Port engines offline," the engineering officer reported. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Life support is failing in multiple sections." Sarah made the hard decision. Evacuate the damaged sections. Redirect all power to weapons and shields. We're not leaving this fight. The crew worked through the damage, sealing breaches and rerouting systems. Freedom's Reach stayed in the battle, firing with reduced power but still fighting. Sarah refused to abandon her position. The Valorians needed every ship they could get. Rising Sun fought with incredible ferocity. Captain Zhao Chen pushed his ship to its limits, firing so rapidly that the weapon systems began to overheat. The battle cruiser's reactor approached critical temperatures as the engineers struggled to maintain power. But Zhao Chen wouldn't back down. Every shot from his ship was one less swarm unit threatening the planet below. On the 4th day, the fleet made a breakthrough. Dr. Tanaka, working with Valorian scientists in a laboratory beneath the capital city, discovered something crucial. The swarm's coordination wasn't spread throughout the entire mass. It came from a central hub, a core that controlled all the nanomachines across the planet. "It's like a brain," Yuki explained to Admiral Webb over the communication link. "Destroy the brain, and the body dies." "Where is it?" Webb asked. UKI pulled up a scan of the planet. A pulsing red dot appeared near the southern pole. "Here, deep underground." The swarm built it beneath the ice caps, where it thought it would be safe. Admiral Webb called an emergency meeting of all ship commanders. Sarah joined via video link from Freedom's Reach, her face showing the exhaustion they all felt. "This is our chance," Webb said. "If we can destroy this hub, we can end this. But it won't be easy. The hub is protected by the thickest concentration of swarm units on the planet. Getting there will require everything we have." "What's the plan?" Sarah asked. Webb outlined the strategy. It was risky, maybe even suicidal. Every ship would need to concentrate their fire on a single point. Creating a corridor through the swarm, ground forces would then drop directly onto the hub's location. It would leave the fleet vulnerable, with no reserves and no backup plan. "If this fails," Webb said quietly, "we all die here." The commanders looked at each other across the video links. They were tired, their ships were damaged, and their crews were exhausted. But no one suggested retreat. "When do we begin?" Captain Zhao Chen asked. "At dawn," Webb said. "Let's finish this." The fifth day began with the largest coordinated attack of the entire battle. Every ship in the fleet, from the mighty, indomitable, to the smallest support vessel, opened fire on the same target. Plasma cannons, kinetic weapons, missiles, and experimental devices all struck the swarm concentration over the southern pole. The effect was devastating. The swarm tried to adapt, tried to spread out and absorb the damage, but the concentrated firepower was too much. A corridor opened in the gray mass, leading down to the ice below. "Go, go, go," Sarah ordered as she led the landing force. This time she commanded an even larger group, 500 human marines and 300 Valorian soldiers. They dropped in heavily armored shuttles. Racing through the corridor before the swarm could close it, the shuttles crashed through the ice and into the cavern below. Sarah was thrown against her restraints as the shuttle hit the ground hard. Alarms blared and the interior lights flickered. But they were down. They had made it. "Everyone out," she ordered. "Form a defensive perimeter." The cavern was enormous, carved out by the swarm's nanomachines. In the center sat the hub, a massive structure that pulsed with eerie light. It looked organic and mechanical at the same time, like a fusion of biology and technology. The swarm attacked immediately. Waves of nanomachines poured from the walls, floor, and ceiling. The combined human-Valorian force fought desperately, their weapons creating a wall of fire between them and the enemy. Commander Alina Vasquez was with the landing force. Carrying a device she had been working on since they arrived at Valoria, it was a viral code, a program designed to disrupt the hub's control signals. But to use it, someone would need to get close to the hub itself. "Cover me," Alina shouted, running toward the hub. Sarah saw what Alina was doing and moved to protect her. "All units, concentrate fire on the hub area. Keep her path clear." The Marines and Valorian soldiers poured everything they had into creating a safe corridor. Alina ran through the chaos, dodging swarm tendrils and jumping over debris. She reached the hub and slammed her device against its surface. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The hub began to convulse, its light flickering. Around the cavern, the swarm units stopped their coordinated attacks and began moving randomly. Confused by the disrupted signals, "It's working!" Yuki shouted from her position, monitoring the data. "The code is spreading through the swarm's network." But the hub fought back. It tried to isolate the infection, to cut off the compromised sections. Elena's device began to smoke and spark. It wasn't strong enough to finish the job alone. Sarah made a decision. She pulled a thermal charge from her belt and ran to the hub. "Everyone back," she ordered. "I'm going to finish this." "Captain, no," her second officer called over the radio. Sarah didn't stop. She reached the hub, placed the charge next to Elena's device, and activated it. Then she grabbed Alina and ran. The explosion was massive. The thermal charge detonated with enough force to vaporize the entire hub. The cavern shook, and pieces of ice fell from the ceiling. The swarm units around them collapsed, losing all coordination. Above the planet, the change was visible immediately. The gray mass covering 3 continents began to break down. Without the hub to coordinate them, the nanomachines lost cohesion and started to consume each other. Within hours, the swarm was neutralized. Within days, it would be completely eradicated. Sarah stood in the ruined cavern, watching the swarm die. Round her, human and Valorian soldiers cheered, hugged each other, and cried with relief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. The cost had been high. 2 ships were completely destroyed. 7 more were heavily damaged. Hundreds of people had died, both human and Valorian. Freedom's Reach would need months of repairs. But Valoria was saved. An entire civilization had been pulled back from the edge of extinction. In the days that followed, as human medics worked alongside Valorian healers, as engineers from both species rebuilt infrastructure, and as soldiers shared meals with the people they had saved, something profound shifted in the galaxy. The Valorians formally requested to join Earth's alliance, becoming humanity's first interstellar partner. Chancellor Zephora met with Admiral Webb on the steps of the rebuilt Capitol building. The ceremony was broadcast across both worlds and intercepted by dozens of other species throughout the galaxy. "You came when we called," Zephora said. "You fought when others would have fled. You saved us when we had given up hope. The Valorian people will never forget this debt." Webb shook his head. "It's not a debt. It's what anyone should do. We help each other. That's what civilization means." Other species began reaching out to Earth, no longer content to simply observe. Some offered trade agreements. Others proposed scientific exchanges. A few asked if humanity would be willing to help them face their own threats. The Deathworlders had proven themselves not as conquerors or threats, but as allies worth having. Sarah stood with Callus on a hill overlooking the Valorian capital. The city was slowly rebuilding. Scars from the battle remained, but new construction was already underway. Human and Valorian children played together in the streets below, speaking a mixture of languages neither species had known a month ago. "What will you do now?" Callus asked. "Will you return to Earth?" Sarah thought about it. Freedom's Reach needed repairs that could only be done at Earth's shipyards. Her crew needed rest. She needed to see her family again, to walk on Earth's soil and breathe its air. But she knew she would come back to space. "This was just the beginning. We'll go home," she said. "We'll repair our ships and rest our people, but we'll be back. The galaxy is bigger than we thought, and there's so much more to explore." "And if another call for help comes?" Callus asked. Sarah smiled. "Then we'll answer it. It's what Deathworlders do." The fleet departed Valoria 3 weeks after the battle, as the ships prepared to jump back to Earth. Sarah stood on the bridge of Freedom's Reach and took one last look at the planet they had saved. It hung in space, beautiful and alive, testament to what could be accomplished when different people worked together. The SOS had reached its destination. The Deathworlder fleet had advanced. And in answering that call, humanity had announced to the galaxy exactly who they were, a species that would cross the void to help strangers in need, no matter the cost. As Freedom's Reach jumped back toward Earth, Sarah thought about the future. The age of humanity standing alone was over. The age of cooperation, built on the foundation of that first desperate SOS and the fleet that answered it, had begun. And somewhere in the galaxy, on a planet they had never heard of, another species might be preparing to send their own call for help. When that call came, Sarah knew humanity would answer, because that's what civilized species did. They helped each other survive in a universe that was vast, dangerous, and full of possibilities.